For 100 years, betting on a United States election was a federal crime. You could bet on a horse. You could bet on the price of corn. You could even bet on the weather. But if you tried to put money on who would become the next president, the U.S. government would shut you down. They said it would destroy the integrity of democracy. They said it turned voters into gamblers. And for decades, nobody challenged them. Until a startup called Kalshi came along and decided to sue the most powerful financial regulators in the world. And they didn't just sue them, they humiliated them. This is the story of how one company used a single word in the dictionary to beat the U.S. government, legalize a billion-dollar industry overnight, and change the way we understand the economy forever. To understand how they pulled this off, we have to go back to the gray era of prediction markets. Before 2024, if you wanted to bet on an election, you had two bad options. Option A was to use an offshore crypto site like Polymarket. It was technically illegal for U.S. citizens, unregulated, and required you to navigate the world of crypto wallets and VPNs. Option B was nothing. There was no option B. Enter Kalshi. Kalshi wasn't built by crypto anarchists. It was built by institutional quant traders. They didn't want to run a casino. They wanted to build the New York Stock Exchange of events. Their argument was simple, but radical. Political outcomes aren't just news. They are economic risks. Think about it. If one candidate wins, corporate taxes might go up. That hurts your business. If the other candidate wins, tariffs might increase. That hurts your supply chain. Kalshi argued that companies shouldn't just have to sit there and take the hit. They should be able to hedge that risk, exactly the same way a farmer hedges the price of wheat. So, in 2023, Kalshi went to the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, the CFTC, and asked for permission to list contracts on which party would control Congress. They played by the rules. They filed the paperwork. They did everything right. And the CFTC said, absolutely not. The regulators blocked the contracts, citing a specific law that bans gaming, an activity that is contrary to the public interest. The CFTC's logic was that betting on elections is basically gambling, and if people can bet on elections, they might try to fix them. They pictured a world where billionaires pay for votes just to win their bets. Most companies would have given up right there. You do not fight the CFTC. They have infinite lawyers and infinite time. But Kalshi did something bold. They sued the CFTC in federal court, and their entire legal strategy hinged on the definition of one single word: gaming. This is where the legal genius comes in. The law says the CFTC can ban gaming. The CFTC argued that gaming means any kind of betting or gambling. But Kalshi's lawyers pulled out the dictionary and said, no, gaming means playing a game. They argued that the Super Bowl is a game. It's played for entertainment. Therefore, betting on it is gaming. But an election isn't a game. It's a serious civic contest for political power. It's not play. Therefore, under the strict letter of the law, betting on an election is not gaming. It sounds like a petty semantic argument, right? Like something a high schooler would say to get out of detention. But in the world of economic law, semantics are everything. And there was a massive variable that shifted in Kalshi's favor right before the trial: the Supreme Court. For 40 years, courts used something called Chevron deference. This legal doctrine basically said that if a law is ambiguous, the judge should just trust the regulator's interpretation. If Chevron were still in place, the judge would have said, well, the CFTC thinks election betting is gaming, so I agree with them. But in 2024, the Supreme Court killed Chevron deference. They told judges, stop trusting the regulators. Read the law yourself. So, when Kalshi versus CFTC landed on the desk of Judge Gia Cobb in Washington, D.C., she didn't ask what the CFTC thought. She opened the dictionary. In September 2024, she dropped a bombshell ruling. She agreed with Kalshi. She ruled that Congress gave the CFTC power to ban unlawful activity and gaming, but Kalshi's contracts were neither. She wrote that just because something involves risk doesn't make it a game. Trading stocks is risky. Buying insurance is risky. We don't call the S&P 500 a game. The government panicked. The CFTC immediately filed an emergency appeal, begging a higher court to freeze the ruling. They claimed that allowing these markets to open just weeks before the 2024 election would cause irreparable harm to American democracy. This was the moment of truth. If the appeals court granted the freeze, Kalshi would miss the election cycle, run out of money, and probably die. The entire industry was hanging by a thread. On October 2nd, 2024, the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals came back with their answer. They looked at the CFTC's warnings about election interference and basically asked, "Where is your proof?" The judges noted that prediction markets had existed for years in other forms without destroying democracy. They ruled that the government's fears were just speculation. They denied the stay. The freeze was lifted. The floodgates opened. Within hours, Kalshi listed the contracts, and the market exploded. We didn't just see gambling. We saw the birth of a new source of truth. While the polls were showing a tight race, the prediction markets were often telling a different story. And because people were putting real money on the line, the data was faster and arguably more accurate than traditional polling. But the real revolution wasn't just about who won or lost. It was about the marketization of information. This concept of marketizing information is critical because it solves a fundamental problem with modern media. Talk is cheap. When a pundit goes on TV and predicts a landslide victory, they pay zero penalty if they are wrong. When a voter answers a pollster, they can lie or just say what they think makes them look good. There is no cost to being wrong. But in a prediction market, you have to pay for your opinion. This is the economic theory of skin in the game. When you force people to back up their beliefs with cash, the noise disappears and only the signal remains. We saw this play out in real time. While cable news was hyperventilating about every tweet and scandal, the prediction markets often barely moved. The money was smarter than the noise. But let's step back from the philosophy and look at what this actually means for the economy, because the practical implications here are massive. The media treats Kalshi like a casino, but for businesses, it is a new form of insurance. Imagine you run a clean energy company. You know that if a certain candidate wins the election, they are going to cut green energy subsidies. Your stock price will crash, and you might have to lay off workers. Before this court ruling, you just had to sit there and pray that didn't happen. But now, you can legally go onto a prediction market and bet on the candidate who hates green energy. If that candidate loses, great, your business is safe, and the money you lost on the bet is just the cost of doing business. But if that candidate wins, the money you make from the bet helps offset the losses in your company. That isn't gambling. That is hedging. That is sophisticated financial risk management, and it's the exact reason why the Commodity Futures Trading Commission exists in the first place, to help markets manage risk. By trying to ban these markets, the government was arguably preventing companies from protecting themselves. So, where do we go from here? The CFTC hasn't given up completely. They are currently drafting new rules to try to ban these contracts through a different legal avenue, potentially by defining them as contrary to the public interest in a more specific way. But legal experts believe the genie is already out of the bottle. The court has already established that these contracts are valid financial instruments, not games. We are entering an era where the line between politics and finance is completely erased. We are going to see the rise of political insider trading. If a campaign staffer knows their candidate is about to drop out, and they place a bet before the news breaks, is that securities fraud? The current laws weren't written for this. We are about to see a decade of lawsuits trying to figure out the rules of this new game. Ultimately, the Kalshi victory proves that in the United States, the definition of a single word can change the world. The government tried to say that democracy is too sacred to be a market. The courts looked at the law and said, in America, everything is a market, and for the first time in history, the price of political power is now quoted in real time. Whatever happens next, one thing is certain. We are never going back to trusting a simple opinion poll again. Not when we can look at the price tag instead.